Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kizi Tanin. I'm Program Officer for Culture, UNESCO Dhaka Office. I welcome you all to the UNESCO Dhaka Office's talk program, Science Education, Thinking Out of the Box, which is organized within the framework of the Goethe-Institut Bangladesh Science Film Festival 2020. Science education has been a priority for UNESCO since its inception, and the Goethe-Institut Bangladesh's Science Film Festival 2020 is an excellent opportunity to join hands and highlight the importance of science and science education. Therefore, on the occasion of the Science Film Festival launched by Goethe-Institut Bangladesh, UNESCO Dhaka Office organizes this participatory talk program with the support of Goethe-Institut. The talk program aims to highlight the role, the contribution, as well as the potential of science education in Bangladesh and to raise awareness among the audiences on the significance of the science education to the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we have two very special guests with us, Ms. Beatrice Khaldun, Head of Office and UNESCO Representative to Bangladesh, Dr. Kirsten Heckenbroch, Director, Goethe-Institut Bangladesh. We have 5 national and international panelists who joined the talk program. Mr. Farooq Ahmed Jewel, Head of Technology, iLab A2I, Aspire to Innovate. Ms. Anya von Kampen, filmmaker, Goethe-Institut. Ms. Mi Yong Choi, Chief of Education, UNESCO Jakarta Office. Dr. Shafiqul Islam, Director, BRAC Education Program. Dr. Mohammad Tariq Rahman, Director, Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, Associate Professor, General Education Department, University of Liberal Arts, ULAB. To begin with, I'd like to request Ms. Beatrice Khaldun, Head of Office and UNESCO Representative to Bangladesh, to deliver her opening speech. Over to you, Beatrice.
Thank you, Kizi. Dear Mr. Farooq Ahmed Jewel, Head of Technology, iLab Aspire to Innovate from A2I, Mrs. Kirsten Heckenbroch from Institute Director of the Goethe-Institut here in Bangladesh, Dr. Shafiqul Islam, BRAC Education Program, Mr. Mohammad Tariq Rahman, PhD and Director Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, ULAB, Ms. Anya van Kampen, filmmaker, Goethe-Institut, and my dear colleague, Ms. Joy Myong, Chief of Education in the UNESCO Jakarta Office. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of UNESCO, I would like to express a very warm welcome to all of you who are participating in today's talk program on science education, thinking out of the box, which is organized within the framework of the Goethe-Institut Bangladesh Science Film Festival. I would like to take this opportunity to extend UNESCO's sincere appreciation to Ms. Kirsten Heckenbroch, Institute Director of the Goethe-Institut in Bangladesh, and of course her entire team, for her valuable suggestion and support in organizing today's talk program and letting us participate in the Goethe-Institut Science Film Festival, which I think is a wonderful occasion. On behalf of UNESCO, I would also like to express my appreciation to all the panelists for their valuable commitment and time to join today's talk program. And we are very excited to hear your different voices and ideas. As part of UNESCO's mandate to lead and coordinate global efforts for SDG 4, Education 2030, UNESCO believes that education is a human right for all throughout life and that access must be matched by quality. At the same time, science education is enshrined in this commitment of education. It has been a priority for UNESCO, as my colleague Kizi already said, since our establishment. So we at UNESCO believe that promoting science education and actually applying and practicing science education at all educational levels is a fundamental building block to building a country's capacity in science and technology, as well as a key contributor to a country's sustainable economic and social development. One of the pressing matters that UNESCO through intersectoral science education approaches and intervention tries to tackle is the steady decline of enrollment of young people, and that includes particularly also young women and girls, in science-related subjects in their education. You may be aware that we have a special prize which is supported by L'Oreal, which is encouraging and supporting and giving prizes to women scientists. And that is sort of one matter where we try to give awareness to the importance of science, and also that women have the same capacity, let's call it this way, to be smart and to contribute in this whole realm of science, be teaching, be in research, being in all this different field of science. So in order to increase and promote science education at all educational levels, we believe that we all need to work together towards building supportive environments that leverage innovative methods for science teaching and therefore inspire interest in science and engineering among young people. Within this context, the Goethe-Institut Bangladesh Science Film Festival 2020, as my colleague already said, is really an excellent opportunity to join hands and to highlight that it's not only interesting to watch a movie or perhaps make a sort of a film about it, but really the importance of science and science education, as well as to provide accessible and interactive resources that demonstrate interesting aspects in science and that show also entry points for learning activities that are connected to the SDGs. On the occasion of the Goethe Science Film Festival, the UNESCO Dhaka Office is honored to organize today's participatory talk program to highlight the role, and as my colleague already said, also the contribution as well as the potential of science education in Bangladesh, focusing on its diverse challenges and many opportunities also. So I think in Bangladesh, it is really quite important, also looking now at the pandemic situation and also there's also normal procedures. We have climate change issues to tackle with. We have disasters in Bangladesh. I was listening to the UN resident coordinators who said we have to remember we are a riverine country, so we have so many issues also where science is actually needed. So I sincerely hope that today's talk program will serve as a small but valuable contribution in this building block of this year's Bangladesh Science Film Festival, as well as promote science education in Bangladesh. So let me once again express our deep gratitude and appreciation to all the speakers who will share their reflections and insights and give us ideas how perhaps we as UNESCO or probably also Goethe, how we can move forward after the Science Film Festival and also this talk. Thank you so very much. Dona Barzo Baike.
Thank you, Beatrice Khaldun, for your valuable words. Now, I would like to request Dr. Kirsten Heckenbroch, Director, Goethe-Institut Bangladesh, to say a few words for us. Over to you, Kirsten.
Thank you very much, dear Kizi Tanin, Program Officer Culture of the UNESCO Office Dhaka. And thank you, dear Beatrice Khaldun, for your opening words for this session. So greetings from the Goethe-Institut to all of you, our dear panelists today. Dear partners in the Science Film Festival and dear distinguished audience on live stream on Facebook. I would like to start with a very big appreciation to the UNESCO Dhaka Office for bringing us all together today under this initiative of the Science Film Festival and on the very timely topic of thinking out of the box science education. And I would also like to extend this appreciation to all the panelists who have been available here to share their valuable thoughts, actions, proposals for future actions, maybe also giving us an idea on how we can further these kind of initiatives. The Science Film Festival is currently in Bangladesh for its second year, and it is actually made for schools, universities as well, and teachers to act on science education outside of the box. So what does that actually mean? So it means to look into a playful and experimental learning. And as we have the COVID times at the moment, it is also something that more than ever brings your lab to your home. So science to be, you know, easily done on your kitchen table, rather than requiring necessarily very sophisticated lab facilities. It is also fun and outside of the box in providing identification figures, cartoons, and thus we have a filmmaker on board here today from one of the Science Film Festival films, who will introduce the Nietzsche, whom you will also see in today's opening film, a small cartoon philosopher who explores themes of the world. So that's kind of one way to look at outside of the box thinking, playful, experimental identification. So, and why should we do this? I think it's about overcoming the challenges of education that Beatrice Khaldun already mentioned. There is often the perception that science is too serious, too rigid, too boring, maybe for boys. And what we feel is maybe necessary is to conceive science more as fun. So first of all, of course, yes, we girls can do it equally well. We should aspire, we can be creative, and science can be cool. And that all is for the development of a country and its society, whether that is Bangladesh or any other country around the world. So science does offer us a lot of solutions to everyday life problems, but at the same time, it's only as good as a society, an education system, or its people, and the creativity it inspires. So from the side of the Goethe-Institut, I very much hope that we will continue with the Science Film Festival in its 3rd edition next year, together with you all who are on board this panel today, and to extend the Science Film Festival as one way to look into a mainstreaming of science education to every corner of Bangladesh in a joint initiative with the government of Bangladesh. Mr. Farooq Ahmed Jewel, I think your initiative has reached to like every corner of Bangladesh. So it would be wonderful to cooperate on this. It would be wonderful to extend this also with BRAC. Mr. Shafiqul Islam, happy to meet you here today. And BRAC has also been particularly doing work on the primary education sector all over Bangladesh as well. It would be lovely to continue our collaboration with the UNESCO offices, as well as with our university partner, the ULab, and Mr. Mohammad Tariq Rahman, again, like very happy to have you here on board as an expert on this. And I think this is an opportunity for getting together, looking into what needs to be done, what can be done, maybe also linking it up to the 50 years of Bangladesh celebration upcoming next year. Thank you all very much. I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I'm handing over back to you, Kizzy.
Thank you, Dr. Kirsten. Before we start the discussion, so it's kind of a ritual to have a group photo, no? When we have this kind of discussion, but it's a virtual one, so we'll have a virtual photo, but together. So I would like to request all the panelists to turn their camera on, and I would like to request my colleague, Mr. Wady, to take a photo, a group photo, before we start discussion.
No problem. Okay, let's ready. Please smile. 3, 2, 1, cheers. I would like to take another one. 3, 2, 1, cheers. Okay, stop.
Thank you. And I would like to request all panelists to turn their video on, please. Before we start the discussion, we'd like to screen a 5-minute short film from the Goethe Film Festival, Nietzsche and the Environment. And we're very glad the filmmaker, the director of this film, Miss Anya von Kampen, joined us today as panelist. So let's watch the movie together before we start the discussion. Over to you, Vaidi.
Nietzsche and the environment. Some people say, nothing good happens unless you make it happen. They say that because every single person can do something to make the world a better place. Even though our environment concerns everybody, everyone takes care of it in a different way. Everybody wants to have lots of things, but lots of things also create a lot of waste. We want to travel from one place to another at super light speed, but that is super bad for our air. Nature is a fantastic packaging station. Why do we repackage everything again and pollute our seas with it? The Earth is getting hotter and hotter, as if it were angry, and crying for help. Nobody knows how to make all the environmental problems dissolve into thin air in one go. But there are lots of ideas. And lots of people with green hearts. Anyone who makes their own little contribution to the environment feels like an environmental pirate, fighting the good fight. For example, not using plastic bags or plastic straws anymore.
Wow.
Switching off the light when you don't need it. And so much more. We have to sound the alarm signals and talk about the environment with others, so they take part.
Wow.
Earth is the only planet we have. It gives us so much. It is just the decent thing to treat it decently. Hey, you environmental pirates! If the environment collapses, it'll collapse onto us.
Thanks a lot. And we'll hear more about the story behind the film from Anya during the discussion. But at first, I'd like to come to Mr. Farooq Ahmed Jewel from A2I. Actually, can you enlighten us about government's initiative to promote science education in Bangladesh? What are you doing from A2I?
Thank you very much. Thank you all to calling me in this discussion. I would like to take a chance to show you something. Now I'm inside a lab called Innovation Lab. The Innovation Lab, actually, I'm taking care of this lab here. So I'd like to show you something before starting my discussion. You are watching a lot of things here. You know, this is the smart white cane. This is the device. So blind people can walk using this device. This device can talk. can give number of feedback. This is a nebulizer system, central nebulizer system. This is a health device, so which is already installed in different hospitals. This is a cooling system. This is rapid cooling system. You can put a bottle and get chilled within a minute. This is a home made refrigerator with a unique feature. There is a platform, there is a compartment, there is a hot compartment, and already Walton picked up this refrigerator, and they're gonna produce 2 lakh copies next year. This is another initiative, photosynthesis for farming inside office or indoor. This is another health device, nurse calling system. This is a sky observatory, and there are a lot of things, handmade 3D printer, and there are many more things. Even this is a educational device. This for hill trek area. So where there is no grid power available, so the student can also get quality education from the multimedia content. And finally, this is the COVID corner. So this is a locally developed ventilator and the other equipments and PPE. Okay, thank you. All of the item, all of the problems solved by the local students. So we encourage school students, university students, even the college students to involve to solve local problem, and we try to facilitate them to scale up all of the problem and ensure the intellectual property. So this is how 8Y and Innovation Lab work for education. Actually, we are trying to involve students in practice, in science practicing, even doing works. We also provide some funds to do their work. So we started actually the future shaping with some schools. This is an experiment because the syllabus and other educational change will require more time, but we are doing a lot of experiment, getting feedback from the teachers and students. So to transform the educational system of Bangladesh. So actually, the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, we would like to incorporate these tools with the school level education, and we are preparing some pilot in school level, even some lab oriented education. So one of the big limitation we have faced, that's the teacher, because at first we need to create a strong teacher pool with the same mentality. So teacher training or teacher teaching is very important for this type of transformation, and the syllabus and the school environment should also be changed. So anyway, jointly we can do some experiment with along with some schools, along with a number of teachers. Even we also do some after school experiment together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is very impressive. Actually, everyone was smiling while watching this beautiful iLab you said. Thanks a lot. That explained a lot about the progress government has been doing in the science education sector. I know, Farooq Bhai, you have another engagement and you want to take a leave, but I think at the end of the discussion, we'll have lots of recommendations from our expert panelists. So we'll definitely contact you near future with all those recommendations, and hope you will we will get your support.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be available with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joel Bhai, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to actually ask Ms. Mi Yong Choi, Chief of Education, UNESCO Jakarta Office, that you are working with Timor-Leste, right? There are lots of good, interesting case study you told us that you'd like to share, that you are working to promote science education aligning with SDGs, some good examples or case study that you'd like to share with us in this platform.
That's right. Very good afternoon to all participants. This is Miyang. As Kizzy introduced, UNESCO Jakarta Office has two functions. One is the science for Asia and the Pacific, and the other one is some of the cluster countries, including Timor-Leste. Okay, let me start with my sincere thanks to Beatrice Khaldun, the director of UNESCO Dhaka Office, and Kirsten Hackenbrock, the director of Goethe-Institut in Bangladesh, for inviting me this talking program. Thank you so much. Regarding the given question on how government initiative promotes science education, as Kizzy says that we have been working for Timor-Leste. So for your information, Timor-Leste is one of the low-income countries having political and financial fragilities in Southeast Asia. So she's the new country in Asia since her independence in 1975 from Portugal and in 2002 from Indonesia. So you can see the difficulties and also the newest country. To achieve SDG 4, especially for quality science education, we have been working with the government, Timor-Leste government, since 2014 up to present with three key strategies. I would say identity, practicality, and sustainability. Regarding the first strategy to bring identity into a basic science education, we had specific two situations when we initiated this national initiative in 2014. Firstly, the government used the Portuguese national science books without any revision or adaptations at that time. Secondly, Timor-Leste has a language complexity like Bangladesh. For instance, the official language is Portuguese. However, in a real life, many people having difficulties in Portuguese. So they use the national language in Tetum or other local dialects. So UNESCO Jakarta Office, so we encourage the government to bring the Timor-Leste identity into the national science books, developed by Timor-Lestean teachers and experts, and published in both Portuguese and Tetum. Of course, all photos used in the books were taken from the Timor-Leste nature. So second strategy to maximize practicality is about the reality of the poor education infrastructure and the human resources in Timor-Leste. Many schools in the country still have not enough functional science labs and the equipment, together with the high rate of unqualified teachers. So to address these challenges, we developed a practical teacher's guidebook, enabling teachers to adopt everyday materials for science lab classrooms. And also at the same time, 100% science teachers across the country were trained to use the developed teacher's guidebooks effectively. So, okay, the final one, to ensure sustainability, we have been working with three major groups. The first group is the grassroots teachers associations, who became the key national human resources, engaged in the developed national science books, and then led the national science teachers trainings up to this year. The second group is the government officials working for curriculum and the sector, policy and planning for political and financial support. So every year, we have increased the public education funding with their support, including for the science education. The last group is the national NGOs and the religious initiative with their influences and the public advocacy and the political decisions. I haven't been trying to talk very quickly because I wanted to meet the 5 minutes. So that's all from me about the strategic country case on Timor-Leste. I know that I have missed many your interested information. I would love to answer it during the question and answer time. So thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. But Myung, I will come back to you because I know you have more interesting story to share and the challenges and opportunities you faced during that time. So I'll definitely come back to you very soon.
I'd love to.
Yeah, thank you. So as I talked about challenges and opportunities, we have experts from national level as well, and Mr. Shofiqul Islam, who has been working with BRAC with this education sector for a long time. So I'd like to ask Mr. Shofiqul Islam first. What are the challenges as well as opportunities to promote science education in the context of Bangladesh? Over to you, Shofiq Bhai.
Thank you, Kiji. And I would like to really record my thanks to UNESCO and the Goethe-Institut to organize this very timely fashioned event. The reason I refer to a timely fashioned, we are going through a time under COVID where our life is much depend on our scientific behavior. And really a big thanks for organizing it. Now, coming back to your question on the challenges, the biggest challenge, if we take the Bangladesh basic education perspective, is the, I would call an environment which is essential for science learning. And what Christian was referring to, that science learning does not really require a big lab. A small table, a kitchen table is the right kind of space to start the science learning. So then what is the environmental challenge? Enabling environment is that science requires space to the children to think and to share and finally to demonstrate. If I put it in a very simplistic way, just to give you an idea, look into our science textbooks at the primary level. It starts in grade 3 and goes all through up to 5. And if you browse this, you will be discovering that these books are pretty science-friendly textbooks. Each chapter and lesson is followed by kind of exercise sections where it would be offering a space to the children to share and then to ask and to challenge. But the biggest trouble in our system that pace is not always given and ensured, because it requires an additional attention on part of the school leadership and the teacher. just to give you a very small example, in grade 3 textbook, you will find that there are lessons which relates to plants and trees. So it's such a natural thing that we can ask the children, form the small group. We can ask that you go back to your own households, your neighborhood, identify what kind of plants and trees you have around you. Classify those which are the plant, classify those which are the trees, and classify even those which one gives you what kind of support. And come back after 2 days in the school and present your sessions. And then the children group just can challenge themselves, ask questions, elaborate, supplement. Now think of such a session, how engaging and lively and fun can be. And so many laugh I can just imagine, There are 5, 7, 10 such group who would be presenting their own cases and not really trying to memorize the things. But one of the biggest barrier to the science education is rote memorization. It requires, that's why I said that it requires a space. It requires differently planning, and it requires just a kind of readiness that we take science in a very practical and a fun way, instead of bringing a heavy laboratory and a heavy science apparatus for teaching science. But it is fundamentally then important that the school leadership is willing to create their space to the children and willing to appreciate the teacher who would be taking this trouble to do it. It does not require a big money really, but it requires a teacher's facilitation role. And it can be so easily aligned to the textbook. And at the end of it, if you ask now children, please put down on the paper what you have done in the last 2 days. And they would be telling us what is plant. They would be telling us what is tree, what is the benefit of plant, what is the benefit of trees, how additional areas of categorizing them, and their availability in their own neighborhood, and more importantly, linking to their life. And then it is learned, and it is fun, through a great fun. And now for such an exercise, whether you call a project-based learning or an experiential learning, how much it will cost? It will not cost much. I'll stop. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting perspective. Definitely will come back to you very soon. But let's get an academics perspective now. Over to you, Mr. Dr. Muhammad Tariq Rahman from ULab. Actually, from your perspective, what are the opportunities and challenges you face or you think to promote science education?
Thank you, Kizi, and of course your team. But my special thanks goes to Beatrice and of course Kirsten for organizing such a wonderful, and as Shafiq Bhai was saying, that very timely sort of webinar or workshop. We really need to talk about this because this is the time, and the government is very keen that we want to have a digital sort of society, and for that we need science. So that's a very important question, that what are the problems to promote science education? And to reflect on that question, I was just watching the movie that was shown, and one word actually is I picked up very closely to my heart, that we need to make green heart, right? So I think promoting science education, the policymakers or the government or the donors, whoever is actually backing up this project, we need to have green heart first. And then we can, take this formal thing into, a very organic thing, because without making it organic, we cannot do it. Like, think about some of the schools and, they have some space, like Shofiq Bhai was saying, that the space is a problem. So I have seen some of the NGO schools and they have space, they have a bowl of water and they have a small little, stone. So the experiment is that you drop the stone into the bowl of water and to teach them the ripples, right? So that's a nice, context to teach kids something new, how the ripples work. But unfortunately, I have visited so many schools and I have seen that, students are putting lots of big, stones, and they're just throwing it like this way. All the waters are, splashing up. And I have seen that the students planted some of the small, trees, around the school, and then those were not taken care of. They died. So the initiatives are there. Some of the initiatives are there, but that organic thing is not coming out. Schools, policymakers, planners, they are thinking about it, but it's not actually implemented in an organic way. Things are described in the teachers' guidelines, and these teachers' guidelines or guidebooks are kept into the trunk. The dusts are there. Of course, there are exceptions. Some teachers are doing it, but many of the schools are finding it really hard to follow them. So I think one of the problem I'm talking about here, that people still think science is a technical concern, and without laboratory, no science is possible. Well, I think this is the first barrier. Science needs to be seen more from a broader perspective. We need to broaden our definition of science. Let's take an example of our SDG goal 15, which says that protect, restore, promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem, sustainably manage forest, combat desertification, halt and reverse land degradation, halt biodiversity loss. Now, here we have some very important scientific ideas which kids need to understand, and more importantly, contextualize. Like, what is ecosystem? What living beings have gone extinct in the last 5 years, and why do we care, right? So these are some of the ideas, very important if we really aim to halt biodiversity loss. And here we are talking about environmental science. But then when we are talking about school science, we are all the time talking about laboratory, like how oxygen and hydrogen makes water. We're hardly talking about ecosystem. We are hardly talking about ecology, biodiversity, desertification. We hardly talk about how ore salines save a life, right? So I think one of the biggest problems is that we need to broaden our definition of science education. It's just not chemistry and physics. It's much more than that. And our SDG goals, if we really look into that, we can see how broadened the science could be, right? So that's one of the problem, and I'll stop here because I have a couple of more, but of course, if you come back, I'll talk more.
Thank you, Tariq. As you said, we are actually always stereotyping the definition of science, right? That's why we call this talk program Science Education Thinking Out of the Box. So it's time to think in a very creative way to promote science education. As we talked about creativity, that's why I'd like to come to Anya right now, Anya von Kampen, filmmaker, and also she directed the film we just screened here, Nietzsche, the Environment. So you can share your experience from making these Nietzsche series, that what are the opportunities and challenges you're facing to promote science-based film for kids?
Thank you very much. I'm very proud and happy to be part of this panel, and I'm happy to talk about Nietzsche, which is maybe an interesting case for the whole world, because it's not typical that something educational content starts in television. But in Germany, we have a quite a long history of educational TV. And so we started with a whole show, a 30-minute show about death, and which is a very, very hard topic and very serious one in Germany, because we are very depressive in this topic. And that was in the year 2012. And in this show, we had 3 episodes of Nietzsche, and explained death in a way that it's a part of life, and we could show that it's possible to be funny even when you explain stuff. And that's maybe the most important fact about Nietzsche, because you don't have to be a very serious when it comes to science education. It's always helpful when it's fun, and when the kids like to watch the content, and that they ask the teacher, could we see more? And the teachers like if the kids are interested in stuff like this. And so it comes that we have 75 episodes in the meantime, with all topics like nutrition, for example, or future, which is also in the science festival this year, and or also like happiness or hope or fear, like different stuff which is interesting for kids. And there is of course material which the teachers can use for school as well. And we created an app together with one of the channels, where kids can use all the animation characters and create their own stories. So we help them to become authors by themselves, and create their own, use their own imagination for becoming a writer. And so it's very important in Germany, for example, to read and to write as well. And that's one point. And so it comes that Nietzsche, they use this character because the kids like it, and the teachers like it for topics which are very serious. Like we did a very successful episode about the virus. And because all the kids know that they have to wash their hands and they have to use masks, but it's important that they know why, and that you don't, they start to think by themselves. And that's the concept of Nietzsche in all episodes. And that's why it's only 3 minutes in really big topics. It's only a start to create own thoughts. And yes, in the meantime, I'm in schools for lectures. I'm doing workshops and workshops with teachers and classes on the same time. And I work together with the Goethe-Institut in an international way. I was in Indonesia or in China, in 8 cities in China. They have these PASH schools. And then we did workshops with kids about different topics. And it's very, very interesting how much kids like to start thinking by themselves. And if you ask them for their own opinion, and not only teach them, but also ask them, what are you interested in? What do you like? What are your talents? And for example, and yes, in the meantime, we have different books. One book which everything starts in TV, and then it's getting bigger and bigger because there's so much interest. We have a non-fiction book about nutrition, for example, with lots of recipes, and we tell the kids what is healthy, and that you should have a look in the supermarket, that you buy an apple from your village next to you and not from Argentina, for example. And one of our most important topics is still death. And we did a whole book, which is looks like this. It's about death, and there is science as well, because we are looking about biology, for example, in a funny way. What happens to the body when there's no life in it anymore, or when you get older in the beginning? Or there's a lot of mathematics in it, because it's numbers is so interesting when it comes to death, because we would be so many people if there was no death. And that's really interesting for the kids. And science as well, and immortality, which is a very interesting topic for kids. Do you want to live forever? These are questions which is Nietzsche asking, and yeah, they like to think. Even the teachers have a good possibility to start a clever communication. And that's the point where it comes to my most important conclusion. It's a communication. If you have good content, you have to talk with the teachers, and you have to work with NGOs and or organizations like the Goethe-Institut and everyone. You have to connect people who aren't connected in the beginning, but it's getting more interesting if you work together, if you are a strong network. And yeah, that's what we are doing now. And yeah, I appreciate it and like it.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah, Anya, thank you. I'll come back to you later. But UNESCO was also very actively engaged to create and promote, you said funny content. So education and entertainment content, we call it edutainment. So yeah, we really understand the background of the movie and this series you have been creating for a long time. Thank you, Anya. So Mi Young, I said I will come back to you. So you were sharing some case study. So any opportunities and challenges you'd like to share with us, or you have identified already while working?
Oh, there are countless challenges which I couldn't share because of limited time. Before I answer your question, actually, our country case for science education was for education for sustainable development, which is linking with the environmental science, because we were trying to find an entry point of ESD, we call it ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, because there are many different concepts. Actually, one of the panelists was talking about the environmental science or school science education, but all over there under the one umbrella, actually. Even we have a different education field, but actually it is for the SDG 4, quality education improvement. So everything is under the one umbrella. But for me, why I selected a Timor-Leste case, because it might be in the similar situation for the some of the schools having not enough school labs or even chemistry, experimental materials, those kind of things. rather than very advanced cases, because that is one of the challenges in Asia, especially for middle income or low income countries. And at the same time, when the country has very strong religious context, sometimes the science education has challenges unexpectedly. However, vice versa, as I mentioned under the sustainability, and one of the group was local NGOs and religious initiatives, actually they become supporting the agencies in line with this kind of a national initiative. For instance, when we developed biology education, the textbook, there was some kind of very sensible, that the illustrating bodies and then there's some kind of productive organs, that kind of things. There are some facts, but at the same time, we could get the very active support from school and the teachers associations and this kind of national initiatives. So actually all about these partnerships and also under the umbrella of education to achieve SDG 4. That's it from me.
Thank you, Mi-Young. So before I come to my last question, I have another question in between regarding this Science Film Festival, actually. So I come to Mr. Tariq Rahman first, because ULAB is one of the partners of this Science Film Festival. They're supporting Goethe-Institut. So what do you think the contribution of this kind of Science Film Festival to promote SDGs, actually, how they contribute? I think you need to unmute yourself first. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Kizi, for the question. I think the contribution would be huge and very significant. These films, I would say, holds potential to bring back the charm of studying science among the students as well as the parents. These films literally showcase why studying science is fun and exciting. This film shows that the laboratory is not inside the school, but the laboratory is the nature. Your nature is the laboratory. Because I was seeing the film, and the film was actually showing everything is done outside, right? Cleaning and talking about pollution. If you really want to know about pollution, you need to experience that pollution and contextualize it, right? So I think that this film's nicely showing that the kids, that science means going outside the class and be into the nature, look into the small details around them, which I think would be able to create some positive impact among the kids to love science. Because we actually heard that there is a decreasing pattern, the students are no more taking science, and girls are also having less and less girls having science. So we need to change that first. We need our kids back to science, and then we can talk about teaching them, changing pedagogy and all this. And these science films, I think, and this film festival can do that, sensitization, building consciousness, and collaborating, different people, and of course the kids. So I think these films would help the science teachers to see how science teaching can be interesting and exciting, right? Science teachers need to know how science can be exciting. It is no more inside the class. They know that from different training, they know that, okay, we need to get the kids outside of the school or the classroom. But then I have heard so many teachers asking me, then what we do? The kids are outside. So these films, I think, does that part. This film actually shows what they need to do with the kids when they are outside. So of course, I think that these films act as a training material for them, for the teacher, not to teach the scientific ideas, but to make them more conscious about how to teach science. So there is a difference in between, I know I have graduated from science discipline, and then I know how to teach science. So I think these films are, and they could be some exciting elements and materials, and can be a good addition to pedagogy, teaching pedagogy, training pedagogy, how to teach science. Thank you.
Yeah, I second you, and I think we'd like to congratulate Goethe-Institut for organizing such meaningful festival. Actually, it's a very timely opportunity to have this kind of event in Bangladesh as well. But my last question, actually, so I will start with Shafiqul Islam from BRAC. Do you have, from your extensive experience, some concrete or solid recommendations how to promote science education in Bangladesh for a better and sustainable future?
Thank you. Thanks to Mr. Tarek, who brought this film perspective. So it is important that we make science easy to the children so that they are happy to learn. It is important that teachers understand science not as a difficult subject, but as a subject where children would be easily engaged and children can really be happy by learning science. It is important that we link science to the community and to the real life. If now I stop here and bring these three perspectives into a science popularization education, what does it would mean essentially? One, somehow unfolding the teacher's interest in and teacher's experience in teaching science. So I am not really asking for a training, but I am asking more for a conversation with the teachers, where we try to understand that what are the barriers to the science teaching and learning. Your original question that you asked me, what are the challenges associated with it? So we need a very open conversation with the teachers. We need a conversations also with the children. And this conversation, what Tariq was referring to, if we can package it through a film, because watching a film it does not require much energy. It does not require a lesson. It does not require pedagogy or andragogy. It just requires you spend an hour time or so and go through it. But it is fundamentally important that we turn around our teachers' training into more conversations, more, it is not a physical space I am talking. It is a space for reflection. It is a space for sharing, and sharing both pain and also pleasant experiences. The second is, which is very important, is the willingness to do it differently. So there is a motivational issue here. So the reason I said, we come across rare good training where we get highly motivated. But I am a believer that conversation can create more energy to the people who are linked to the science teaching learning, including teacher, which can create willingness that I'll try to do it differently. That's very important. And that differently should be appreciated, because one of the key problems that when we see rare things, out of box things, we do not always appreciate it. We consider why it is deviating from the normal practices. It takes a long journey when the innovations become a normal practice. So here is a very important that how do we package it. And third, very important, to generate the evidence, because not in every school it will work equally well. Now think of St. Joseph School. There is a science fair every year. In Brack School, we organize science fair every year. And what is the fair? It is the fair of the products that children produced in cooperation with their parents, community, and teacher, and displayed to the community and parents, where the children receive the appreciation. It is fundamentally important that we consider science doing it a very different way and not the typical way. So generating evidence is an essential thing, because that then can be packaged again for new conversations, packaged for sharing experiences with the others. And I like so much what Anik said. Children, are willing to understand not what they learn, but why they do learn. Just giving you one of the recent examples, think of Amphan, the cyclone storm that we have experienced in the southern part of the country. And if you now visit and have a conversation with the children, they would be happy to share what their experiences was. And that's not a pleasant experience we know. But the moment you get audience, children feel pretty well, because then they're the actor, then they're sharing their experiences. And so those, the why is fundamentally important. So also for the teacher's conversation, and I'll stop here, we have to tell to the teacher that why we want a conversation and not a stereotype training. So going back, what Beatrice and Kristen said, we need science really mainstreaming. We need science to take to the kitchen. We need science to relate to our daily life. It's not something which comes from the solar system. Now think of the SDGs. At least half of the SDG goals are directly associated with the science teaching. At least half. Whether you talk of water, whether you talk of sustainability, whether you talk a few other beyond the education goal. So science we have to understand. We need science for our own betterment of life, and just not for a certificate. Thank you.
Thank you, Shafiq Bhai, for your valuable thoughts. Same question to you, Anya. Any recommendation? I think you need to unmute yourself first.
I was listening, concentrated. I liked what my colleague said before. It's very important to have a good feeling what teachers need. And that means that you have to talk with them all the time. Is it working, what you think of? There are the makers, the content makers, for example, or the scientists. And the teachers are the little bridge to the kids. And that's what we have to be aware of all the time. And we have to help the teachers. We have to make it easy and to translate what we think which is important in a science education, and give them good tools to work with. That's what I think in this case.
Thank you, Anya. Tariq Bhai, same question, the recommendations, and another thought actually came to my mind, that in Bangladesh, actually science is always labeled something for only good students or brilliant students, not for everyone. That is another actually challenge we face all the time, actually. So from that perspective, or from your experience, any recommendations?
It's still me. No, it's
sorry.
No, Anya, you'd like to
Anya,
share something?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, please, then I'll coming back to you. Yes. Yeah, Anya.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. I think it's always important to make it easy to
Exactly,
make the border very, very low, to have a nice entrance. And even if kids are not at home, it's a difference if you have doctors and teachers and professors as your parents, or if you are in an environment which is not used to bring education to your home, and that's why I think it's always a good idea to make it easy in the beginning, and just to make a little fire, and then it will burn after a while if it's good and interesting.
Yeah, thank you. So Tariq Bhai.
Thank you, Kizi. I think I remember one of the experience I had. I was visiting one of the NGO schools, and I was working as a consultant. So I will bring that incident back into this discussion again, because I was asking the teacher that why all these teachers' guide are in the trunk, and why you are not using them, right? Because there are nice little things written for you to help you to teach your kids. And she was saying that, well, what you write, sitting in your SC room in Dhaka office, and where we teach, it's two different place, and it's two different reality. And I want to get back to Shafiq Bhai. I so agree with him that it's not about giving them training materials, some teaching guidebooks. It's about, feeling from heart and, asking them really that what you need to teach well, because contextualizing science is one of the most important things. But with that, I also want to, respond to your question that whether parents sometimes think, or even the students think, that I'm not that a good student and therefore science is not for me. That doesn't come from the student itself. It also comes from the parents. Parents give some sort of idea that you are not good in science and therefore go and study something like arts and something like that. So it's not about only the students, but also the parents. It's their combination of duty. And there I want to get back to Anya again, that we need to, green our heart. And this heart doesn't mean that only the policymakers, but also the parents, also the teachers. And for that, these kind of, films can be shown to our parents too, right? So that they see that my children can do something different. Because at the home, the children doesn't have that, space to create, to innovate, right? Hardly. But when they make something in the school and when you showcase them, then you have something to show your parents that, see, look, that your kid has done that. Well, so I have 3 or 4 specific recommendations, and I'll be very quick because I know that you don't have enough, time. So my first recommendation would be that, if possible, make these films available to the schools and let the kids watch them, inspire them to make their own films. Students should be able to make science films as a project to be graded. Invite parents showcasing their work I was talking about. Tell the parents why these kids' work is important, not only for them, but for the greater society and humanity. And in this case, the university like ULab and other universities also can collaborate with different schools so that we can, tell them that for making this sort of film, we don't really need high-tech, and Anya was also mentioning that we don't really need high-tech, apparatus and all these equipments. We can do this through mobiles, right? And ULab has a reputation of mobile film festival and all this. So university and school can have a collaboration together. My second recommendation would be that allow these films into teacher training manuals and also training materials, right? My third recommendation would be take small projects to promote science. And for that, we need lots of small research project, because the way the urban school find it difficult, that's not the way the rural school find it difficult promoting science. So that their needs are different, and we need to understand it from different contexts. That what a remote school need to promote science and what St. Joseph need to promote science. And we need different type of research to understand that. And therefore, our recommendation would be, if possible, add at least one education target and indicator for all the SDG goals in government initiatives to achieve SDG goals. By that I mean, if SDG 13 says, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts, then add one target for education to achieve that goal. Now we have only SDG 4, where we are talking about education. But what about SDG 13? What about SDG 15? What is the educational part in it? We are talking about environmental protection, environmental degradation. So there, we also need one SDG target or indicator that how universities, schools can help, to achieve and halt environmental degradation. We don't have it right now. We just think about only SDG 4, and that's about education. But SDG 4 mostly talk about quality and quantity, making access. And SDG 4 talks about vocational education and technical education. And there comes my another point. Vocational education and technical education doesn't actually replace science education all the way. These are three different things, even though they have connection. So we need to figure out by what we mean what, right? And my final recommendation would be, we also need to broaden our definition of terminologies. I was just saying, for example, SDG number 13 says, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. And its target and indicators covers a wide range of ideas and activities, not just only disaster risk reduction, but if you see the government policy papers, when they are talking about how government is preparing for SDG 13, they're only referring disaster risk reduction. But when we are talking about SDG 13, it's not only about disaster risk reduction, it talks a lot of things, right? So we need to broaden again our conceptualization, how we are actually understanding these SDG goals. That is most important from the policy perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq Bhai. Regarding the recommendation of availability of these films to school students, I think Kirsten has the answer, but I will come to Kirsten later. Before that, over to you, Mi-Young, about some recommendations from your end. I think you need to unmute yourself first.
Okay, thank you. Still, I was too concentrated to listen to the panelists' recommendations. It was quite interesting. There are many points, but if I say overall, I would stress on the national education system part. Probably from the UNESCO vision and the UNESCO Education 2030 perspective, you would say. However, if you see, actually education 2030 for SDG 4 is not the separate SDG goal. Please be aware of that. SDG 4 is supporting all of the other 16 SDGs. It is the only SDG which is the overarching SDG. So actually all of the panelists, the points for the learning with fun, those kind of things is very important. However, we needed to think about lower grade science education and maybe upper grade science education. And then when we talk about PISA, the national standard of science education, it's not easy. It's a whole of full of complexity of this science education level and quality. In that case, like for instance, there is an academic word, a significance life experience. So some of say that just SLE for environment education, which is the bigger the scope than the ESD. In that case, probably that kind of learning with the fun is one of the core parts. But I would not point my fingers to teachers, because the teachers have a lot of challenges as well. It's not teachers all of, okay, you didn't listen to children, or okay, why you didn't give your all of willingness to teach science education. It's about the conditions at schools or within the education system. So I would like to recommend, when you think about the science education, the quality improvement at the national level, because today our focus is how we can promote science education at the government driven forces. So in that case, we can collect a part of a part for the as a component of science education for the lower one and the upper one, also together with the teachers' challenges to address within the country education system. That is the whole my recommendation, because when you think about all of the different challenges from partially perspective, it would never ever be made the achieving SDG 4. Maybe that's why all we need, NGO, we need it for your contribution, and the government officials or some international agencies in Bangladesh, they're very significant for science education, but at the same time, under the one vision of science education, leading by the country, not by the outsource or any other forces, but with the self-willingness through the country-driven national initiative. That is the most important recommendation, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimo. That's very constructive. But Beatrice, do you have any last thoughts, or what do you think after listening to all the panelists?
Thank you, Kizzy, yes, and thank you to all the panelists. I think we had a sort of a very nice range also of sort of different entry points where you are coming from, but that doesn't mean that you had different opinions. I think everyone has very strong points. Going, so to speak, from the top, as Jakarta colleague Joy was just talking about. Yes, I think, of course, we need the commitment of the government, and we have to remember that A to I is not alone the government. A to I is sort of in Bangladesh one important branch, if you will, from the government, but is not all of the government in terms of science education and sort of literally everything. But yes, I think it is important that we have a commitment from the government. And again, I think the entry point, and as Ms. Joy mentioned, the SDG 4 is actually a good entry point, and is actually not talking in and by itself, but is sort of contributing to other SDGs. But I think it's not done always very solidly, yeah, because it is focusing on sort of the basic education issues. And yes, science education would actually be basic education, but we tend to limit ourselves to certain aspects. So I think there's sort of really work to do. And I think the point with the teachers that I understood is, I think we had there different aspects of the teachers. And I think in the end of the day, I think we have probably, you know, in Bangladesh, we have the curriculum development board, and we have, you know, the teacher association, and we have, you know, but it's actually in the end of the day, and we have the teacher training, but we have at the end of the day that probably the curriculum and the textbooks is done by someone, and then it's basically given to the teachers, and the teacher get teachers education, but that's teacher training, and that's kind of it. So there are still gaps in a way. And so I think science is probably a very interesting and probably underestimated entry point, as we, I think, discussed, that it's literally life skills, if you so will, and that it needs to be more connected to, you know, what is all around. So many people, we just think, go through the day, so many things are linked to science, but no one thinks about it. And that is, I think, what science education, school, the system can probably elevate. And I think it is entities like the UN, like Goethe, like everyone of the government, where we probably need to work better together to do it. And I would assume that probably what Joy in Timor-Leste did, because Timor-Leste is a small country, they are in need, and so you could trial it basically there. And even there you said you had a lot of challenges and so on. So it is not easy, but I think it is something, if we take this communications that we now had, where we had, I think, different and very important forces of Bangladesh included. And I think also the films and the entry points that Anya presented us, I think all of this, if we think a little bit creatively, we can basically integrate it in some smart way and through different ways, push it a little bit first and not say, okay, it was an interesting conversation. We have now the recommendations and everyone goes back to business as usual. So we have to somehow stay together and see how we can push it in the right corners in Bangladesh, that, you know, we have successes and not just frustrations, that the government says, this is too much, we cannot handle it right now, we have COVID, we have this, we have that, but that we do it in a really integrated and holistic way, I would say. That is not easy, but I think the recommendations and the ideas that you presented are entry points for us. So I think as a final word from UNESCO, I think it's a challenge, but I think we should find ways, probably the participants we have here in the panel, if we try to come up with some further steps and talk with some of the players, so to speak, in Bangladesh, we may have, I think, interesting way forward. And we can also do little projects and little showcases, which I think may also be important to have then success stories and create more interest. And I have the feelings that BRAC is already doing interesting things anyway. ULab is doing interesting things anyway. Our colleagues in Jakarta doing interesting things. Anya is doing interesting things, but probably we need to bring Anya more to Bangladesh also. So I think we can all leverage up a little bit. So that is sort of my final take on things. And I think that is, we did exactly what the title was, out of the box. we stayed out of the box, but we also decided we need to go a little bit beyond and sort of think outside the box. And I think we actually did this quite well. So thank you everyone also from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice. So Kirsten, your last thought, as well as if you'd like to share to the audience who can watch these interesting films, like how it will be available for everyone.
Thank you, Kizzy, and thanks to all the speakers and to Beatrice. It was wonderful to listen, and I think a lot of entry points, indeed, taking up on also what Beatrice summarized, came up for us to not just have this session today, but to take it further and see on, particularly like Beatrice mentioned, maybe a piloting of a certain rethinking of science education. And I think what I found very relevant was what was your summary, Dr. Tariq Rahman. You mentioned this not putting the responsibility on the teachers only, but that it's a societal effort. So the parents have a role to play, and the teachers do have their role to play, the kids have their role to play, but it's also kind of the question of the overall educational environment. So I think that is a very important point. And another thing that did not come up particularly, but maybe that was kind of lurking or inherent in much of what we discussed, was this whole issue of post-truth and post-facts. which we did not talk about, but that say, societal approach to science education would also help to, provide fact-checking, basically at the very individual level, provide the educational background to it, being able to self-check what you read on whether that is true or not, may be a fact or not. And so I think this is something to look further into. So how can we engage not just the schools, but who's behind, who are the players, to make sure this is in a very complex theme with very diverse also objectives. So the objective of a general education, the objective to be able to check facts, but also the objective to find good solutions for everyday life problems. So that's a complex matter with a complex set of actors. And I think it also today's panel had all of you speaking from very different experience, but then speaking about the same matter and coming up with similar ideas for thinking out of the box. And certainly this going out of the box, as in going out of the school, experiencing is maybe something that we can nicely tie also with the festival, which was not possible this year due to COVID times. It was all virtual. But I think that is something that how can we not, screen films only, but how can we drag, or maybe not drag, but how can we really motivate a citizen science, a student's science, right? And that it has also that there's an interest in society, and also by adult society, you actually see what kids can do as science. About the festival, it is still going on for another 13 days until the 20th of December. We will, after this session, again, share the links on our Facebook pages, how you can register. So you can register for the festival. There's 24 films you can watch for free. The 2 Knitsche films are available on the Vimeo platform where you have to register, but they're also right now available on Bongo BD. So an open platform, they're openly available all over Bangladesh and in Bengali. So Bengali synchronized. So for all the schools that you may also have in mind, these are very easy to watch just on Bongo, to every corner of the country, more or less. Whereas to get the full package, you would just have to register for free on this SFF platform. Shoma will share all the links again right after the session to all the speakers, and we'll make sure for all the audiences on Facebook, we'll just share it again. So you can use the next 2 weeks.
Exactly. So if you click the link, you can register yourself and can watch the movies free online. Thank you, Christian. So we were discussing about how to promote science education. We talked about space for reflection, sharing, and thinking. We talked about contextualizing science. We need a holistic approach, and this dialogue should be a starting point actually to move forward. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Shaftiqul Islam from BRAC, Tariq Rahman from ULab, our colleague from Jakarta, Mi Young from UNESCO Jakarta Office, Anya von Kampen, the filmmaker from Goethe-Institut. Thank you, Kirsten, from Goethe-Institut for your support. Thank you, Beatrice, from UNESCO Dhaka Office. Everyone have a good evening and stay safe during this pandemic. Take care.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.